Welcome to the Exceptional Advisor webinar series. I'm your host, Tony Davidow. I'm thrilled to be joined today by April Rudin, but before we get to April, I want to provide a little bit of a background of why we've created this series. The Exceptional Advisor webinar series is literally taken from the pages of the Investment and Wealth Monitor, our award-winning content, where content is curated by your peers to make sure we're providing timely and relevant information. The format for the webinar typically follows either new and innovative research that we think would be of value to you. From time to time, we'll provide an economic and a market outlook. We'll provide panelists who provide a perspective on a unique part of the industry, and we will provide academic research when it becomes available. I think the most important thing about the format for all of you on the call, especially if it's your first Exceptional Advisor webinar series, it's really designed for you. It's designed to be interactive. We encourage you to ask a lot of questions. I'll be fielding questions as they come in, and April's not bashful about taking questions, whatever direction you would like to go in this, because this is really your call. The topics covered typically will follow either the CIMA curriculum, which is more investment oriented, wealth management curriculum, which is aligned with our CPWA program, retirement management, practice management, and we will cover behavioral finance. So it's my distinct pleasure to introduce April Rudin, and April probably doesn't really need an introduction. April is the founder and CEO of the Rudin Group. She and her firm have done a tremendous job really helping advisors think through marketing and branding and communication. She's a prolific writer and speaker across all industry forums. She's the #1 influencer in the whole world on analytica. Yay. But I know the one thing about April that is certainly very important is she is a mentor and role model to women advisors and entrepreneurs. And April, I know that's something we're going to get into in our discussion here today. But I'm really excited about the topic, and I would just point out that the topic is an article that will appear in the next issue of the Investment and Wealth Monitor, which is engaging clients in the new normal, the future in a post-pandemic world. And April, as we're kind of briefing on this, it is a different world, but as every challenge is presented to us, there's also these great opportunities that fall out of that. So maybe just as that, describe what you mean by this new normal, and what do we think the world's going to look like in the year to come?
So that's a great question, and thank you for that intro, Tony. The new normal is something that we can all really sort of define for ourselves. I mean, Muhammad al-Aryan is the one who coined the phrase, the new normal. And I think that was in 2006, but there's a lot of white space here. So I would say even for myself, I started my firm in 2008, and we could have considered that sort of a new normal time. But I saw the opportunity for firms to really, and advisors to rebrand themselves and take advantage of a time when there would be white space. If everything remains the same, then there's no need or no opportunity sometimes for people to change, and they're coasting. And so I think that this sort of break in the action and a change and a pivot to digital has given us all a chance to rethink things that we thought were important in our personal lives and our professional lives, and just a chance to reboot.
Yeah, and it's interesting, we kind of reflect back a year ago at this time, we're in the midst of the global pandemic, nobody knew what was going on, and I think a lot of advisors that I was hearing from, and I suspect you were as well, were concerned about what do we tell our clients? How is this going to end? And I know in our prep call you used a quote, and I normally don't read things from a piece of paper, but I think it is pretty profound. You said there's never been a better opportunities for advisors to show how essential they are. And I think that's so important. And I think as we went through that really difficult period of time, the really good advisors, they're going to thrive because they demonstrated their value when their clients needed them the most. Is this the new normal that you're referring to?
Well, yes. So I would say let's just go back to that term essential. So that's the new term, and it might be one of those words of the year, the essential worker. And essential workers have been, the frontline workers. So they've been the healthcare workers, they've been the teachers, they've been, people serving us. And I just wanted to extend that really to advisors thinking about themselves and how they've have an opportunity to become more essential in their clients' lives. And how does that happen? Well, there's market volatility, there's health volatility, there's just an uncertainty in the world, and where clients just need a rock and a place to go to help them understand what's happening. That can be, the descriptor for a financial advisor. I would even go so far as to say that probably the term financial advisor and wealth manager can undergo some changes now, because the work that they're doing is far more than that.
And that's something I wanted to hit on as well. I think you used the term kind of a co-pilot, or really reflecting more of a partnership model with clients. And I think you're so right that I've always argued that, the portfolio is a portion of the value, but there's so much more, especially when you go through difficult times. What do you mean by this partners sort of model? And do you really think that advisors should rebrand their value proposition around that?
Yeah, so I feel like the term advisor and client is somewhat hierarchical. And, as if this person doesn't know much and this person knows more, and they're always advising them, somebody on a lower level. And I think there's an opportunity to have more of a partnership with clients now. And that can prove more of how you can become essential. So becoming more involved in your clients' lives. Of course, portfolio management is part of what they do, but more on goals-based investing, more on their total financial picture, more on so much more that's happening in people's lives. Second home, should they relocate? Second and third jobs, their children might be moving back home. So many different things that can be happening that can make an advisor's work even more essential, and to create more of a human contact beyond the once a quarter or once a year portfolio review that people are doing. I mean, I would even argue that, here we are, I've invited everyone to my home, right? And you've invited us to your home. And what I hear from many advisors is it's really created a tighter and better and deeper connection, just simply by seeing the way someone lives. So rather than meeting over that traditional mahogany table at someone's fancy office, I think, clients are really more appreciative of getting to know the person behind the suit. I'll say you have a suit on now, so behind the suit.
Only for you. I don't
Even
normally.
throwing away the suit, Tony, I would say that, like some of these, I was going to say artifacts, but some of these artifacts like suit and tie and some of these things are all subject to change. And when you reopen your office, what does it look like? What does it feel like, right? And dispensing with some of the formalities that we've had.
So I definitely want to get into that, and I love the idea of kind of looking in the home, and it's something I've certainly in my past life, training advisors, especially high net worth and ultra high net worth clients. You want to see where they live and what's important to them. And I always thought it was better to do a meeting at their home, see the pictures on the wall, see what's important, to see their value system, as opposed to bringing them to your office. We've almost accelerated that trend. And I wonder if you think we go back to the traditional office model, or maybe this model is actually a better way of engaging clients.
So, I mean, for me, I think it's a much better way of engaging clients. I don't think that the office of a financial advisor serves the same purpose as it did, because I would agree with you. Going into someone's home and frankly being invited into someone's home gives you an opportunity to really get to know them deeper, right? And to see, as you mentioned, pictures of their children or no pictures of their children. Do they have pets? How do they treat the pets? Just a sense of being relaxed because people are in their own home. Bringing a client into your office is an unfamiliar setting for them, but a familiar setting for you. And so I think advisors need to think about what they can do to make their clients feel more comfortable in a setting rather than reversing it.
Let's take a little bit of a step back. Last year was unbelievable. Do you feel advisors were adequately prepared? And we kind of reflect back now when we've got very comfortable with technology. Do you think they were prepared from an organizational perspective? And I know you talk an awful lot about how we communicate to clients. Do you think they were prepared for this virtual world that we've kind of had to adopt to?
Well, it's hard to generalize. I would say, over the whole cross section of advisors, some people were more prepared than others, and some people, were mostly in the middle. I think everyone knows that they've had a smartphone, right? Everyone has a computer. Everyone knows that digital was possible. But primarily advisors, I think, used it in their personal lives rather than thinking about how they could use it in their professional lives. And it wasn't until the pandemic that people were forced, literally, right, into this change, and everybody must go digital. And I think it's sort of proven to us that we can do it, we should do it, and not only that, we can be more successful. We have more time. I
Yeah.
mean, advisors have reported to me they have just much more time for all the activities that they need to do during a busy day. So there's no, travel time in between meetings. There's no commute time to your office, depending on where you're located. So I think the work from home, and I think, it also gives advisors a chance to reconnect with their own family.
Yeah.
Let's be honest about that. And that just helps them be more sensitive to their clients.
Yeah, we had a discussion in one of these calls late last year, and the wealth advisor, in fact, was saying that it gave her better work-life balance. And it is a daunting task to deal with as many clients as advisors have, especially when it's difficult, but to have that work-life balance. And I think clients appreciate it too more because they realize that you're actually more human, that you're caring about
Okay.
their family, and I'm not just in the office, trying to make money all day. Um, you
You know
talked
what I
about
was going to say to you? Do you remember that BBC commercial where the baby came into the room?
oh yeah,
It was a commercial, it was an interview,
yeah.
and the guy was being interviewed. That was just before the pandemic, and everybody freaked out about that. And the woman came in, and they thought she was a babysitter. But it really, what he didn't realize, it really humanized him.
Mhm.
And I think that's what we're going through now. So, maybe in the beginning, when you talk about work-life balance, people would be embarrassed or upset if their child came and asked them a question, the dog barked, the phone rang, but all of those things are all part of our lives, and they do humanize the advisor. And that is really, if we'll talk about more, but if I can say one thing, it's that. It's how to communicate your value prop in a transparent, authentic way so your clients get to know you as a person
Mhm.
beyond the investment advice that you're going to give them.
So let's pick up on you were talking about this personal branding and maybe not this hierarchical relationship that you have with clients. How can advisors redefine, and this is kind of an ongoing thing. I mean, we probably talked about personal branding for 20 years, and it's kind of an iterative sort of process, but in this new world order, it seems like it's more important now than ever before. How should advisors rebrand themselves? What is their value proposition? We already discussed this. It's more than the portfolio.
It's much more than the portfolio. I mean, I would even suggest to advisors, so everybody, no matter who they are, has a personal side and a professional side. And there's some balance to that. So if we even think about, which I know we'll talk about in a little bit, social media, at one point, Facebook was for your personal brand and LinkedIn was your professional brand. And today what we see is more of a blurring, right, where people are posting more professional things on Facebook and using LinkedIn for more personal type things. So I think every advisor and every firm needs to find their comfort level somewhere in the middle. And I am not the person to say that. Everyone has to sort of find their zone. But what I would encourage is to really, if you're going to think of a balance, err more on the side of more personal information about yourself when you think about your bio or your LinkedIn profile. For example, knowing that I grew up in Detroit, knowing that I'm from Michigan could just be a conversation starter. I'm a tennis player. I have 2 sons. All of these things, what are my passions? What philanthropies do I believe in? all of these things become conversation starters, and they make more personal connections between people. So as advisors are thinking about their personal brand, they should think about how much they really want to and will reveal about themselves that can be conversation starters or connection points with clients.
And you mentioned social media, and as the #1 influencer in the world, it seemed like a logical place to go. In my past life, working for a large wirehouse, I know in the old days, there were a lot of restrictions. I think in some ways, this has kind of accelerated. I think the firms have started to recognize that social media is a good thing, right? It's a way of kind of reflecting your brand, and it's a good way of engaging clients. And I'll just be honest with everyone on the call, April has actually given me pointers on my communication and making sure that we use things wisely. What are maybe some of the tips for advisors if they haven't really engaged with social media and they want to have that brand out there? You're talking about maybe some of these more personal things that they put on either a LinkedIn or a Facebook.
So I'm going to give some suggestions, but I also want to say that I think it's really important, and not just because it's my business, but to engage a professional. I know that a lot of advisors will rail against do-it-yourself investors, right? You don't want to think of your clients as being do-it-yourself investors, so I don't want to think of people as being do-it-yourself marketers. But that said, Here are some great tips. So #1, a new headshot. So I cannot emphasize how important that is, and people show me their profile and their headshot might be something from 10 years ago or 5 years ago. Maybe they don't look like that photo anymore. They may have less hair or more hair depending on their gender. They might have gained 50 pounds, lost 50 pounds. A lot has happened during this pandemic. So I would encourage everyone, #1, get a new headshot. And you're wearing a suit and tie, if that's something you're comfortable with and how people see you, then that's how your headshot should look. If you're more accustomed to just wearing, say, a suit jacket, blazer, and a shirt, take a picture like that. Whatever you look like, get comfortable with that and be authentic to that. Who's going to trust investment advice from someone that has a fake picture of themselves? #1. #2, it's all about the reveal. It's about figuring out what your value prop is. How are you different from other advisors? And who are the best target clients for yourself or your firm? So many people don't pay attention to that. Maybe they're aspirational for ultra high net worth or high net worth clients, but yet they don't have the training or experience to be able to serve them. And perhaps they might even onboard one client, but that could be the end of their practice because they may spend so much time and energy with that client, disregard their other clients. So you really need to know where your sweet spot is. And to quote my son here, he told me once, "Mom, stay in your lane." So stay in your lane is another really important piece of advice. If you do one thing and you do it well, just stay in that lane. You don't need to be everything to all people. You can find the resources, you can refer people outside, but just staying in your lane, I think, is something, again, really important for your profile. Another tip would be plain English. Make sure you don't rely on cliches like best and most and things like that, because those don't really hold water. What people want to know is more about the person. So the more personal your profile can feel, the more it can feel like at the end of it, after you read it, you feel like you know something about that person, not you know something about their accomplishments.
So it's interesting you say that, because as you were describing that, and you're emphasizing so much this personal connection. I'm looking at a lot of the LinkedIn traffic, and everyone's, it's a great accomplishment that you're on the Forbes top list or the FT top list. But I wonder if that's more about you as a professional, and I wonder if there's more value in talking about my daughter just won a swim meet, or my son just graduated from college. Are those personal things really making a stronger connection?
Totally. I mean, these industry awards are, yes, I agree, they're important and people want to feel valued, but they're just that. They're an industry award. And if you cannot translate that to a client benefit, then it shouldn't be there. You need to, as you so rightly say, it's got to be more client centric the whole offer, right? Clients, what do people want from you, or what can you offer people? So by showing your daughter at a swim meet, talks about what kind of parent you are. Talks about your certain age children. Maybe that is something that you can align on. There's so many of those sort of touch points that you can put out there that are, just so important. I had someone that I was working with, and I always think about this story. He used to put out all sorts of very technical content, market outlooks, and investing and investment advice, but highly technical graphs, charts, all of that, because he was a CFA. And he would never have any interaction. He used to say to me, nobody ever likes my posts, or nobody ever does anything. So I happened to ask him, well, what were you doing this weekend? And he said, oh, I was gardening. And we had this huge bumper crop of cauliflower. And he said, we didn't know what to do. And he asked me, do you know cauliflower rice? And I said, yes. And he said, well, my wife and I, we made, 4 different recipes with cauliflower, and we created cauliflower rice. So I encouraged him to get out of his comfort zone and post a picture of the cauliflower and a picture of one of their finished recipes. And that was his most engaging post ever. He received the American Rice Council commented on it. This is not rice. People offered up, here's some other recipes. I love cauliflower, but it was his most engaging post ever. And so we talked about like how that feels, right? It felt to him like a personal connection with other people, and it brought people out of the woodwork really to connect with him. And it's a conversation starter. So I'm not suggesting that your entire LinkedIn feed should be recipes, let's say, but throwing in some more human connections certainly enliven things up and get away from charts and graphs that people might not want to see.
And that's a perfect segue. I wanted to get into, we were talking about some of the lessons learned, and I know in the article, one of the things you mentioned is, and I just recall this last year at this time when we were doing the calls, people were, how should I engage my clients in talking about market volatility? And it would be a mistake to ignore that it exists. And you talked in the article about just kind of accepting it's there and figuring out how your clients want to engage around that. So beyond kind of the social, what other sort of means of communication so it doesn't feel like you're teaching or speaking down to the client, but you're sharing, this is how we all feel going through these difficult periods of time?
Yeah, so I think, you just use the language, right, that people want to use. It's about we, it's not about you, it's not about me, but it's about we. We're all in the pandemic. I mean, it's global. We're all feeling market volatility. We're all feeling uncertain times. And some people might want more or less support. And so I think it's a question of advisors actually asking their clients, how much support would you like to talk more? Just knowing that the line is open. Some people may have only wanted to talk to their client once a year heretofore, but maybe now they want to talk once a month, or have the opportunity to just call up somebody or have a Zoom call if they're feeling uncertain. Maybe they need more support in explaining this to their adult children who may be moving home. And I read some, really crazy statistics. More than 50% of adult children within certain ages have moved back home with their parents. So all of these things are really changing the way that clients and their advisor and what that relationship looks like. And so I think the most important thing to do is to ask, not tell. And if you keep that in mind, you'll have a different, form or type of communication with every different client. And that's as it should be. There's not a one size fits all or a silver bullet here that we can send out.
And you and I were talking before, and you said something which I want to make sure that people kind of think about, and that is that there's that opportunity maybe to engage the whole family because they're now all together. And I know as an industry, we've often, we focused on the matriarch or the patriarch of the family, and we haven't really thought about the siblings, but the children. but here they're often in the same house. So there's this great opportunity to engage the family in a different way and maybe to develop that relationship with the next generation, which would have been difficult if you had them come into the office. Can we just talk a little bit about that? And then I want to talk about the male versus female sort of dynamic that we were talking about. I want to make sure we hit on that as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Tony. I mean, and there's great answer to it now also, right? So with everybody home and whether or not they're even in the same home or they're just home, many advisors have reported to me that they've been able to have deeper and more meaningful conversations with their clients, simply because everyone's home and they can talk more about their legacy or succession planning or what's important to them. Kids of all ages, right? Children of all ages, which may not be children, could be adult children,
Right.
but they're able to ask questions. And so many people come to me with that statistic, like up to 98% of wealth inheritors change advisors. And that's because many advisors, as you said, may only have a relationship with one person, whether it's the matriarch or the patriarch. And that's not right either. So I always encourage people to uncouple couples, right? So a married couple is one kind of couple, an adult son and parent could be son or daughter, an adult could be another kind of couple. You want to uncouple them because each member, each person is unique. So even though you might think of them as a household in your CRM, they're not a household, right? They're actually two different people. So understanding more about how each person wants to be communicated with and what their likes and needs are is hyper critical to provide that hyper personalization and treat each person as an individual rather than a household.
And I wanted to hit on the topic as we're starting to get some questions coming in on it. And you and I were talking earlier, we tend to be a white male dominated industry, which is something that I think we've got to solve for over time. And I applaud the Investment and Wealth Institute. There's a Thrive initiative, which is really to empower more women and minorities and providing more role models. And you've been a role model, and I know it's something you're very proud of. It seems to me our industry in particular would be much better served with younger advisors and older advisors and minority advisors and women advisors, just because that's the clientele that we're serving and people want to see themselves in their advisor. Talk a little bit about how we can do a better job kind of bringing them into the fold, and maybe for teams out there, how maybe we can proactively reach out and bring in that next generation or somebody who looks a little bit different than the way that they look.
Yeah, it is something I'm really passionate about, and I do have a personal story about it. So yes, you have to see it to be it. And, clients come in all different shapes and sizes. And so the best teams are those that have advisors in all different shapes and sizes. My own son, when he graduated from college, my younger son, he told me he wanted to be a financial advisor, and he went on some job interviews and then reported back to me that he did not go to college to be a salesman. So I think we need to think about what is the entry-level job to our industry and how we can really train people and how we can make it a better sort of experience than thinking about they need to be salespeople. They need to bring in business. How can they learn about the industry if they can't learn about the industry, right? There's no way that they're going to make it. So I think we need to have, as an industry, more entry-level programs and different kinds of entry-level programs. I think InvestNet has, InvestNet College on Campus. I think there needs to be greater awareness on campuses about this profession and about how rewarding it can be. I think that that's really lacking. My own children are exposed simply because of me and, perhaps your own children, right? But otherwise, people have never heard of the profession, many people, of financial advisor or understand what it's about. I think for many people, they may think it's a lot of math, and that's off-putting, but of course we know it's just addition and subtraction. There are a lot of different tools out there. And today, only about 15% of financial advisors are women, yet women make up 51% of the population. Now, there's another point here I want to make, Tony. So there's another sort of misnomer out there, which is that women, that a lot of advisors come to me and they're like, we want to hire a female advisor because we want to engage with more female clients. We hear that they're going to be inheriting a lot of money. So here is breaking news now for our audience, which is not all women want to work with women advisors. Not all men want to work with male advisors. So resist the urge to really over segment anything like that. The reason that you want to have a variety of shapes and sizes is to give people the choice, right? Not for you to dictate the choice, right? Here's our women advisor. She works with women. Because when you play it back and you have, here's our male advisor, he works with men, you understand that it doesn't work. And then if you only had millennial, going through this with my children, they said, oh, our friends are now financial advisors. Like, do you really think I'm going to give them my money to manage when they just graduated college? So it's all about having these diverse teams and thinking about your group or your organization as a diverse group and everyone adding some value.
You talked in the article about younger clients, and I've been thinking about this for a long time because I have two millennial daughters myself. And I've heard a lot of the people who study it say, well, I'm not sure millennials will ever go into an office. They're going to engage with technology and all of that. Well, now we've been forced to deal with technology. And I wonder if there's some lessons we figured out that Zoom does work. It may not be as personal, but as we've had here, we've had a good exchange. We've got to know each other because we can look inside each other's homes and all of that. And I wonder, using your son as an example, if we're missing the boat if we think that the traditional financial advisor path and the traditional financial advisor role is really what the future is. Maybe it is more of a combination of technology and engaging people in different sort of ways. And I think in the article too, you also referenced the ability to demonstrate things. And I wonder if the younger generation, my kids are certainly much more facile in dealing with technology than I am. I wonder if we just need to recast what that next generation advisor is and what they do.
Yeah, no, I think, when I talked about over segmentation, the very same thing happens with millennials. I don't think that we can say all millennials do this.
Right.
I have two millennial sons. You have two millennial daughters. I don't know that we can generalize. I mean, each of my two sons is different. When they graduated college, I sent them to a financial advisor, and my older son texted me, he wants me to use a Robo advisor, but I don't know anything about that. Why does he think I'm here? Right? So I think that that's a really important concept for people to understand, that you cannot have an offering for millennials, and not all millennials want to be digital. Not all boomers want to be with a human. It's letting people choose what they want. And that's what I mean about the multiple entry points. We don't have to over segment. We don't have to create an offering that is just technology. In fact, I can't remember the exact statistics, but I just wrote a piece about Merrill Lynch, and some of their highest adoption in their $10 million plus clients has been ultra high net worth baby boomers, right? And why? Because they have complex assets and complex portfolios. Of course they want digital. Do you think they want an abacus? Do they think they want you in the back, calculating something? Everybody wants digital, but it's to what extent do people want digital? And they don't want it called digital, right?
Right.
I think that's also another mistake that I see people, talking about digital. It's really more about how you run your practice and what does it look like underneath, right? And that's sort of underneath the hood stuff doesn't really belong in front of clients. It's just how you run your practice.
And it's funny because I think the same thing about Robo. I think Robo and digital are kind of bad terms with clients. It's kind of a pejorative sort of term when, people like you and I have been in the industry for a long time. We always think of technology more as an enabler. And, in the old days, we were begging for more technology to make us more efficient in managing our practice and doing what we do. So I think the positioning there is key. I want to just bring it back a little bit as I'm getting a question on this, on how do we prepare clients for the next, right? Because we know there will be a next, whether it's a pandemic or there's going to be another market shock because we're running big deficits and all of that. And in particular, I'd love to maybe just kind of hit on how do we prepare them for the shocks that will occur? How do we prepare practices to be better organized for the inevitable when we know what's going to occur?
That's a great question. So here's what I would say about that. Number one, and it's really just one rule, be proactive. I think we don't want to sit back on our heels. I mean, with the average age of financial advisor being sort of 60 plus, many people have been operating in their practices for a long time and have been resistant to change because if it's been working, let's face it, why change it? Yeah. But the truth is that now we realize that there can be many different changes and things we can't plan for. So I would give advisors the same advice I give to my own children, which is you just want to plan for the future, right? You want to know that there can be ups and there can be downs, right? And that those are market cycles, right? It's like turbulence on an airplane. It's not going to kill you. It's going to be there for the long run. So I think educating clients and letting them know that this is, a blip on the screen, it doesn't feel good because it's uncertain, but running away from their clients. I mean, there was a bad statistic that I read about, in one segment, I can't remember, but people didn't communicate with their clients because they didn't know what to say. So even if you're saying the wrong thing or you don't know exactly what to say, be proactive in your communication. Talk about your own personal experience. And that could range from your own portfolio, sharing with them, I've had some dips, I've had some, some things didn't perform as well as I liked to, but I know it's going to come back again, right? And it's not just all about returns. There are, for many families, and you know this from your work, particularly ultra high net worth and high net worth, that are not thinking about returns. Yeah. They just want to remain level. They're thinking more about their legacy or succession planning or philanthropy. And all of those are great topics to bring up with clients now because people are thinking more about their future, insurance, right? All of these different topics that are peripheral to their portfolio, but could be central to them. So without asking and without knowing, you're just going to impose your own feelings upon people. And it's really important to ask and not tell.
And that's a perfect setup for our last question, which is you and I have both written a lot and worked with a lot of ultra high net worth families. In your article, you mentioned the Capgemini report. And I've kind of thought for a while that the market's becoming somewhat bifurcated, robo or digital, kind of at the lower end. But that Capgemini report really spoke to exactly to what you were just saying, which is the ultra high net worth clients are demanding hyper personalization, which I think plays into the hand of the advisor who wants to really be very personalized. So maybe just kind of pick up on that just a little bit more, because I think that is important when people are trying to reframe their value proposition.
Yeah, that's a great question. So two things I would say about that. Hyper-personalization has come to us because of the big tech companies, right? Everybody has a personalized experience, whether it's on Amazon, Spotify, Peloton, like you name it. You have a hyper-personalized experience and you're able to create something that's good for you. And so when advisors think about their competition, I always encourage them to think about big tech being a competitor one day and one day soon, right? It's not the advisor next door. It might not be the wirehouse across the street or the global bank that's downtown. It might be Amazon or Google or Facebook offering, greater wealth management services, and that will be your competition. And their ability to hyper personalize what they do is already there because they're a technology company. So I think it's important to think about where your competition is coming from. And in that Capgemini report from last year, something like 29% of ultra high net worth said that they would consider a big tech company as their wealth manager because they have comfort with these brands. And, that's something different than I think what a lot of advisors are thinking. So I think in terms of future-proofing your business, you need to really think about that.
I've written a book, and in my book, I talk about the fact that the next competitor may, in fact, be outside of our comfort zone. And if you think about the Apples and the Amazons, they probably have better algorithms and better AI intelligence than we do in our world. So if you imagine that they do come into this space, how then do we distinguish ourselves?
Right. So that's that will be a totally different, talk about what is a game changer, right? That'll be a totally different game changer. They will also, though, have a hybrid model. Let's face it, everybody knows that, it's not just one, it's
Mhm.
not the other, it's the middle, right? It's some combination of hybrid. It'll be more about the brand and more about the person that you work with and your relationship with them. So how to create a stickier relationship that doesn't get disrupted, get closer to your clients.
Fantastic. April, this has been fantastic. We have covered so much, and I could spend another hour just picking your brain on things. So thank you for being so generous with your time. April, you've been very generous in sharing articles that we have on the console that have been published in the Investment and Wealth Monitor, but also you've shared with us some other research that you've done with Think Advisor and Barron's and financial planning. If folks want to get access to that, you can download the links. We also wanted to thank the Investment and Wealth Monitor for giving this forum. For those of you who may be new to the organization, if you want to donate, they have a very generous scholarship fund. And April, I know you'll appreciate this. The scholarship fund is really to help minorities and women to advance in their career. And I think that's been really a terrific initiative of the organization. And I would also point out, if you are not yet certified and you want to be, certainly check out the link below. I think the certifications really help distinguish you in a very crowded marketplace, whether it's the CIMA, the CPWA, or the RMA designation. I think those sort of designations not only give you the competency, but they give you the confidence to really serve clients and complex needs. And then lastly, for those who are CIMA, CPWA certified, if you already want to get your credits, there's a ton of materials. There's ACE Academy, which is coming up at the end of the month. There are webinars. There's all sorts of content that's published in the Investment and Wealth Monitor, the Journal of Investment Consulting, and the RMJ. So there's a lot of resources at your disposal. Please feel free to take advantage of all of that. And we'll be back to do our next Exceptional Advisor webinar series, I believe, in May. So April, thank you so much. This has been so insightful.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Tony. And thanks to IWI for inviting me today.
Absolutely. Hopefully we'll have you back soon.
I love it.
Thank you, everyone.